calls Dr. Davis to the stand. TC Sample for the defense. May I proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please introduce yourself to the members of the jury, spelling your last name for the record.
Hello, my name is Dr. Layton Davis. Davis is spelled D-A-V-I-S.
What do you do for a living?
Well, I'm an election fraud advisor and a professor at the University of Georgia Law School.
What is your educational background?
I have a bachelor's degree in political science from the Indiana University of Pennsylvania, a law degree from Wake Forest University School of Law, as well as a PhD in quantitative methods from the University of Kentucky.
What experience do you have in the field?
For the past 10 years, I've been focusing on election fraud and election law. I've written numerous textbooks and articles as well. I've also been an advisor for the United States Senate with audits.
Turning your attention now to today's case, how are you involved?
I was approached by the Truman City Council to perform an audit on the circumstances surrounding the mayoral election in 2015.
For your work, were you provided with sufficient facts and data?
Absolutely. I was provided with all of the voter registration information as well as multiple exhibits, and I did personal interviews with residents inside of the district.
Did you use reliable principles and methods?
Of course, in my line of thinking, I teach them to my students, so I ought to use them.
And did you apply them reliably to the facts of today's case?
Yes.
How did you begin?
I began by interviewing members of residents of District 12. I stuck with District 12 solely because it was the only district that alleged to have misinformation about the election.
And what did you learn from these interviews?
Well, I learned that the residents of District 12 had in fact been misinformed of their voting rights in March of 2015.
How were they misinformed of their voting rights?
Well, of the 400 interviews that I conducted, I found out that 138 of these individuals had received phone calls telling them about requirements for education, home ownership, and no criminal record whatsoever. 166 individuals had indicated that they were able to vote the day after the election, March 18, 2015, and 75 individuals had talked about contact with a man named Bailey Reynolds, who was impersonating an election official and providing them with false information. None of the information that any of these individuals had received was true.
After receiving this information, how did you proceed?
Well, I used the information to answer 3 specific questions.
And what were those 3 questions?
The first question is, was there fraud present in the 2015 mayoral election? The second question was, if there was fraud, did it affect the outcomes of the election? And the third and final question was Mayor Max Heisman or his campaign linked to that fraud?
Well, let's break these apart, starting with the first question. Did you find evidence of fraud in this election?
Yes. We found evidence that in the 2015 mayoral election that there was someone attempting to give voters misinformation about the election.
Through your analysis of this case, did you find out who that individual was?
Yes. The only person that the evidence could conclusively link to that fraud was a gentleman by the name of Casey French, who the voters identified as Bailey Reynolds.
Your Honor, may I approach the bench and the witness in turn with previously admitted evidence?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
I just handed you previously admitted evidence, a picture of Casey French.
Yes.
How did the evidence link this man to the fraud that was occurring in District 12?
Well, this man, Casey French, who the voters identified as Bailey Reynolds, was impersonating an election official. He was providing flyers with misinformation to the voters in District 12.
Let's turn your attention now to your second question. Did you find evidence that the fraud affected the outcome of the election?
See, this question is a little bit difficult to answer because it's actually impossible to tell if the fraud changed the outcome of the election.
Well, why is that?
Well, this is a question of votes not cast, so it's almost impossible to tell how these voters would have reacted with the absence of fraud. Because they didn't cast the vote, we can't tell how they would have reacted. And when voters don't vote, both candidates lose.
Let's turn our attention now to the last question. Did you find evidence that Mayor Heisman was involved with Casey French with this fraudulent activity?
Through all of the interviews that we conducted, there was absolutely no information that linked Mayor Heisman or his campaign to this fraud. Although there have been allegations of a connection, our audit cannot conclusively link him to the fraud whatsoever.
Were you able to come to a conclusion regarding the circumstances surrounding this case?
Yes.
What is that conclusion?
Well, our conclusion is that there was fraud in the 2015 mayoral campaign, or the mayoral election, but the only person that can be conclusively linked to that fraud is Casey French, who the voters identified as Bailey Reynolds.
Your Honor, at this time I have no further questions. Permission to retrieve evidence.